Okay, Dr. Mindy here, and I wanted to do a video for you guys because you've been asking if you can fast with kids. And so there are some really cool things you can do with certain age children around fasting, and there are some absolute no's. So on this video, I want to show you which fast is best for kids, which fast you should never do with kids, how do you talk about fasting with kids, what does that look like for a child, what does it look like for a family to build a fasting lifestyle. So really excited to bring this to you. It is our fast training week this week. We have involved the family. So if you're new to my channel, know that once a month we are fasting together as a community, and this time we brought the family in. If you want more experience with fasting, join us in our Resetter Collaborative in Facebook or check out our community page here on YouTube. So as always, I hope you guys get a lot out of this information. If you're new to my channel, subscribe. And if you love what you're hearing, please send it out into the world. We need to make the world healthier, and fasting is an incredible way to do that. Enjoy. Okay, guys, I want to dive into how do you know when it's right to fast your children and when should you not fast your children, and which fast is safe for a child, which is not safe for a child. So on this video, we're going to go through those pieces. And I really want to bring to you 5 key points because we're getting this question a lot. And this week is family fasting week. So for fast training week, I added in a third option. And when I added that option in, I wanted to make sure that everybody is safe, that everybody is creating healthy eating and fasting behaviors in their family. So it's really important to me that you get these 5 things, okay? First, age absolutely matters. If you have a child under 16 years old, I am going to ask you that you don't invite them to fast with you. I'm going to ask that you just model fasting, and you can talk about fasting, but if your child is under 16 years of age, fasting in the form that we do here, so the 24-hour fast, the autophagy fast, the 3-day fast, no go for these kids, okay? So that's the first thing that I want to say. Now, I will give you some other ideas for them that can move them towards a fasting lifestyle, but I want to be really clear, under 16, no. Now, if they're 16, even I've seen it in our clinic with some 15-year-olds, and they're coming to you and they're curious because they know you fast, then I would say absolutely a 16 or above, you could teach them intermittent fasting. Again, they have to have come to you. This is not something that we push onto them. So if they come to you and they're wanting to know how to intermittent fast, you go watch the video I did on beginning fasting, how you start off teaching somebody to fast. And it really is, you push the breakfast back an hour, let them get comfortable with that, then push it back 2 hours, and you slowly over time will start to see that they can effortlessly go 13 to 15 hours. I've told this story before that when my daughter went off to college, the summer before she went, we had a conversation about intermittent fasting because I knew in the dorm it was going to be really bad quality food. So we talked about like fasting as a tool to navigate that bad food. Now, at that point in time, she was 17 years old. So those kind of conversations are very healthy to have with your teenager. So if you have a teenager, absolutely intermittent fasting if they are wanting to do it. Okay, second piece of advice that I have on fasting for kids, and this really applies to you guys that have younger kids, is I really want you to start to find their natural eating and fasting rhythm. So here's the problem that we have in our culture, that we are teaching children from an early age that the moment they get up, they need to eat. And we're also teaching them that when we put food on the table, whether they're hungry or not, they need to eat. So by the time we get into our adult years, we have lost our children who are now adults have lost their sense of when they're hungry and when they're not. They're going according to a clock. And I know many of you have had that as well. For years, I thought breakfast was the most important meal of the day. And a lot of that was cultural conditioning. So with this second tip, I really encourage you to start having conversations with them about when they notice they're the most hungry throughout the day. Now, obviously, this is easier to do with like an elementary school child or a middle school child. You can have these conversations very easily. I will tell you that when my son was in middle school, he and I had a conversation about breakfast, and he really hated breakfast. And before I knew everything I knew about fasting, I was like, you got to eat it anyways. I don't care if you hate it. It's the most important meal of the day. Yes, I did parent him that way. And then once I learned everything about how our body is meant to go long periods without food, I started to have a more intelligent conversation with him and asking him, when do you think you're the most hungry? And finally, we got down to he was not hungry in the morning, but about 10 o'clock when he got a little bit of a break at school, that's when the hunger kicked in. So I made sure he had good food at 10 o'clock so that could be his breakfast time. So start looking at what that rhythm is for your child. Your child might not be a big dinner eater, but maybe they're a big breakfast eater. Fine, then cut off dinner early, have them, when they go to bed, when they get up, then maybe you might serve them breakfast. But what we want to do with kids that are in middle school and in elementary school is we want them to get in touch with their own inner hunger messaging. We don't want to be always pushing food in their face. We want them to know what their body is designed to do. And whether a kid is 5 or an adult who's 55, remember that the human body is meant to go long periods without food, and so that it can kick into some of these amazing resources that we've talked about on this channel. Okay. Number 3, and I'm going to reemphasize this. I've said it earlier in this video. Never, ever, ever push your child to fast. They have to ask. So again, when they're younger, it's really important that you just create conversation and that you start to observe, but you don't say, hey, we're not eating right now. We're fasting. Never do that. So I just want to point that out one more time. Okay. Number 4, what is it possible, especially with your elementary school and your middle school age kids, is it possible you can teach them about the blood sugar reader? Now, what does that mean? So when I first learned about the blood sugar reader, I was blown away that only diabetics were using this. It makes no sense that we are only giving blood sugar readers to diabetics. I learned so much about the food that I was eating based off of that blood sugar reader. When I was a teenager, the only way I knew if I ate too much was that darn scale, and that gave me weight problems. So the blood sugar reader, let's start teaching that to children. Now, you might be thinking, there is no way I'm going to prick my child's finger. Not a problem. But if you have a child that you are having intelligent conversations with, prick your own finger, show them through you. Remember that they don't always do what you say, they do what you do. So if you're not eating breakfast till later and you're looking at your blood sugar, say it out loud to them. I remember when my kids were in elementary school, I used to let them know that I worked out when they were at school, and I would just casually verbalize it so that they knew that working out was a priority to me. So you can teach them through you what that blood sugar reader means and why you're checking it. If your kids are older, middle school and into high school, absolutely they could use that blood sugar reader if they're comfortable with the prick. It's pretty cool too. You can also remember, you don't always have to do it in a fasted state. You could actually do the reader post-meal. And how cool of a family experiment would that be if you did different meals and said, okay, let's see what our blood sugar is an hour after a high carb meal. What would it be an hour after a protein meal. And now you're really teaching, but get involved with them so that they feel like it's a supportive environment. That could be pretty cool. And then the last thing that I'll tell you is that I think it's really important that we teach kids what it feels like when we eat and what it feels like when we don't eat. So the younger kids, again, I'm going to go back to those toddler years. Of course, when they didn't eat, they turned into little monsters. So you could verbalize that, like, hey, you know what? I think maybe we should have eaten a half an hour earlier. So you can talk to them so that you can start to train the way that you want them to think around food and fasting. When they're older, like teenagers, I used to do a lot of this with my teenagers where I would say, did you notice how much sleepier you were after a meal? I wonder what was in that meal. And I would just ask questions. I wonder what that was in that meal. We have a joke going on in our office now that whenever we break for lunch and actually eat lunch, we're less productive in the afternoon. So many of us here in my office now don't eat lunch because it gives us that ketone high, and then we're more productive in the afternoon. So with an older child, you could have that kind of conversation. You also could look at, and this ties more into food, but you could look at, like, teenagers are very focused on skin. So you could see, try once they start intermittent fasting, you could say, have you noticed that your skin is clearing up? You tie it to something that is really motivating to them. So in summary, if your child is under the age of 16, all you're going to do is try to identify when they're hungry and when they're not, and is there a rhythm to their eating. Over 16, absolutely, you can do intermittent fasting. Once they get into their 20s, they can start doing 24-hour fasts, and they could even start to train for a 3-day water fast. So that's my advice on fasting for kids. We are doing our family fast training week this week. So if you want to join us and know how to involve the whole family in this process, go to the community page and you can see what the rules of this fast are. I can tell you something really fun we're doing in our family. Our daughter is at college. She's 20. And so I texted her this morning and asked her if she and her roommate wanted to do 1 meal a day with us, no grains, no sugar. And she was like, yes, let's do it. So really fun to be doing now a little longer fast now that she's getting older. So it's fasting, and food in general can be a really cool bonding experience. You don't have to live in the same area. It can be a really cool way to connect. So that's my advice on fasting with kids. And let me know if you fasted with your kids, put it in the comments. What's the reaction been? And as always, I really hope this helps. And let's start teaching natural rhythm eating to our children. I think it's a phenomenal idea. And let's get those teenagers intermittent fasting. They will definitely start to see massive changes in their body. So as always, hope that helps.